Hello, everyone, and welcome to Dreamleapers with Harriette Cole. Can you believe that we are at the end of 2024? I remember, I remember when it first started. It's kind of amazing that we are here. We've had a whole year filled with every possible experience that we could have, each of us having had different experiences. But as we look back at the year and think about what's happening as we move forward, I will say for myself, it has been a lot of joy, a lot of love, a lot of sorrow, a lot of challenge, a lot of connection, disconnection, like everything. It has been a lot. And I stand in this moment grateful to be here, grateful to be able to experience a lot because loved ones didn't make it to this point. And I am grateful that I am here and that I get to move forward and get to move forward with you in communion with you as we move forward in this world. And as we were talking about who would be a great guest as we're making this transition, my team and I thought of someone who we had on in the past. She is a psychotherapist. Her name is Jeanni Johnson. You might remember her, but let me tell you a little bit about her. She is a board certified licensed clinical social worker, both in Minnesota and in New York. And now she's based in Westchester. She calls herself the Love Psychotherapist. I love that. I'm going to ask her about it. She is the CEO and founder of For Love and Psych LLC, where she's dedicated to destigmatizing mental health through accessible clinical interventions. Over the past decade, Jeanni has focused on mental health and addictive disorders, supported by collaborative research at the Nathan S. Klein Institute for Psychiatric Research. So she specializes in anxiety, depression, and relationship issues. And she's got the degrees to prove it, licenses including MSSW, LCSW, and LICSW. People in her field think it's important for you to know they have the credentials. So I'm telling you what they are. I don't know what it means. I just know that she's really good at what she does. And her career is driven by a belief in collaborative healing and non-judgmental care, aiming to empower individuals on their mental health journey. I just thought it was really important at this time when we are assessing where we are and where we're headed, that we would bring someone on to help us guide our steps as we move through 2024 into 2025. So please join me in welcoming Jeanni Johnson. Hi, Jeanni.
Hello, how are you, Harriette?
I am well and very happy to have you here. You know, Jeanni, I think we talked about this before, but a lot of times people rely on their friends for, that great insight about how they're supposed to live their lives. And friends are very important. I don't take anything away from friendship, but sometimes it's helpful to have a professional to
Yeah.
give some perspective on what our issues might be. Why is that important to you?
It's the most important to me, and I think the most important in many people's lives because there's a threshold for what degree we should be placing our issues and our dilemmas onto someone who has somewhat of a biased perspective with us.
Mm.
Our friends, they love us, and they sometimes they want to keep cheery for us. They want to stay really optimistic for us. They have a hard time telling us the hard truth because there can be a consequence to the friendships in that way. A professional can be objective. They can tell you the hard truths because they have no investment in any way, shape, or form in whether or not you take on the advice that they give, whether you implement it or not. They're able to show up for you.
I think that's extremely important. And also, mental health professionals, while they can be objective, they also have to figure out a way in. How can I share with client X what he or she needs to know so it can be heard?
Right.
How challenging do you find that to be? Because I know each client is different, each patient is different.
Yeah. I think it's there are varying degrees of difficulty depending on the person. I find I've geared a lot of my work in the past towards women, but actually the demographic that I've been working with as of now and seeing much more of are men. especially men of color. And I can tell
Good.
you, yes, really, in this last year. So I think some of the narratives that have been spoken that have been encouraging our men of color to get out there and to get help have been working, because I've been seeing a lot of them in my practice. But I can tell you definitively, where working with women, it was sort of, I will say, not smooth sailing. I don't want to be, too conceited in my work with other people, but it was pretty smooth sailing with women. I have a cadence. I do really well in counseling women and showing up for them. And the fact that I think I understand what they're going through from an experiential perspective, as well as from a professional standpoint, and just being so obsessed with women and how they work and how to help them. But in working with men, it has been a great deal more challenging. They are a great deal more guarded, oftentimes. It takes a longer time to build trust. It takes a longer time to really understand and be clear that while I'm not going to innately be able to speak their language because I'm not a man, I can understand from the standpoint of having a father, from the standpoint of having colleagues and professionals who are males, from the standpoint of being studious and learned, I can help. And so that's been a great deal more challenging, I think, than my historical work.
Understood. I mean, there's that Mars Venus thing that people say men and women really are different. And I can imagine, even for a therapist, that would have its challenges. What would you say are some of the top issues that men and women have faced in this year, 2024?
I would say the top issue, just hands down, is relationship issues. So relational issues. And I would say from the more intimate or romantic perspective, many people this year were of the mindset that they would be in partnership, and it would be long-term partnership, and it would be successful long-term partnership. That if they were in partnership, their partnership would grow and it would flourish. And then, 2024 hits and inflation rates are really high and finances are low. And if you were in partnership, there was a struggle with those finances, because finances can be a big issue in
Mm.
relationships. If you were single and on your own, you didn't necessarily have or feel comfortable dating or seeking a relationship with other people because you didn't feel solid or safe, or that sense of security in your life and the way your life was being managed, because things were uprooted terribly. I think the second thing was economic. The economics this year for people felt like huge step backs,
Mhm.
felt like where they had built a foundation, that foundation slid from underneath them very abruptly. And yeah, I would say that was definitely number two. And then it was health. Many people losing their insurances this year, not being able to pay insurance premiums, struggling with connecting with doctors who were network with their insurances if they had insurance. These things were really big issues this year.
And did you find, just in the space of mental health, because some people's insurance will cover
Yes.
mental health, and just, from not just you, but also your colleagues, what you are aware of, did you find that there were many patients who couldn't continue their therapy because they did not have the insurance support that they needed?
I found in my practice, because I'm private pay, I didn't have those types of issues. I did have colleagues who did, and who were of the mindset that they were not going to be losing clients based on that. And they were able to either provide sliding scale fee for those clients so that they could continue until obviously they were ready to graduate appropriately. Or they did pro bono funds or pro bono funding. So they'd collected, and I've done this as well, collected community funds, allowed
Mhm.
people to gift if they wanted to give the gift of therapy to other people. They were looking to, be in community. And so utilize those funds towards clients who were coming in who could only pay a certain rate or who could pay nothing at all.
That's good to hear,
Yeah.
because that there's an effort being made, because quite frankly, with medical doctors, I don't hear that. What you just described is not something I've heard. "Oh, well, my patient can't, pay anymore and the insurance isn't there, so I'll basically help you out." That is not something that is a common I don't have awareness of that. Maybe it
Doesn't
happens
it?
in clinics or I don't know.
There are clinics and outpatient services where those things are allowed, but mostly what you see is people seeking emergency care, so care from emergency rooms because they don't have insurance and issues that they're coming up against now have reached, unfortunately, crisis status. Or we have, clinics that are things like preventative health clinics and things like that that are available that do mostly they do screenings, preventative care screenings and things like that to make sure you're not unwell, but there isn't a lot of aggressive care that's being done where you're not being billed, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, look, the healthcare system is in a precarious position, but when you just described those top 3 things that are impacting people's mental health, they're all around the economy. They're all around financial insecurity, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And what's interesting to that end, Jeannie, is that it doesn't matter where you start. It's not that's not targeted to so-called poor people, people
Mm-hmm.
who have low income. It could be anybody. If you
Yep.
started, you could start way up here, and then if you don't have where you started, the floor has fallen out, and there's this frightening cascading effect that can occur, and it does affect your mental health.
Absolutely.
So what do you suggest to people who are in that kind of free fall? Because there are thousands and thousands of people who at this point, this turn of the year point, as we move into 2025, not sure what their income is going to be, not sure if they'll have insurance, just unsure of financial footing. How do you help folks when they're in that position to preserve their mental health?
Absolutely. I think the greatest help I supply is in reassuring people that they have the capacity to take a look at their lives and recognize where they can make cuts, where maybe potentially when it comes to the way they've been living, they haven't taken the time to ensure that they're simply focusing on what's necessary related to being in the world and related to consumerism. I think sometimes we get caught in this loop of thinking we have to consume in a certain way, believing that we have to show up in a specific way so that people see us in a specific way. And when it's not real and when it isn't fostering your dreams and it isn't focusing you towards purpose, it's something that you can cut. Um, you know, some people, they're buying lots of groceries and things like that where they are not recognizing and taking time that, hey, listen, a lot of times the food goes bad here when I shop in this way. A lot of times, I'm not inviting guests over like I said that I would. So, let me not buy as much food. I've been in community. Being in community is of the utmost importance these days, and having an understanding of the value of showing up as community and accepting community.
Mm,
Because if you're going to fall and things are going to go poorly, falling on your own hits so much harder than having your hand held and being near people who love you, who care about you, and who see you clearly. So I've helped people to really walk in truth this year and to be honest about whether or not they need help and then ask for that help.
that's powerful. Hey guys, this is Dreamleapers with Harriette Cole. We are at the end of 2024, moving into 2025 with our beloved Jeanni Johnson, who's helping us through her professional lens to understand how we can navigate with strength and grace as we move into the new year. Jeanni, you talk about community and the importance of community. And I want to give this juxtaposition because I know plenty of people who, at the point when they feel that they are lacking, I lost my job, I didn't get the promotion, I lost my relationship, something happens.
Mhm.
Something happens that they're not as proud of as they might want to be. And they're people who are accustomed to being tough and strong. And I'm the one who holds it down, which is so common, certainly for people I know. Those people are not necessarily going to community when something bad happens. They're often hiding,
Mhm.
emotionally hiding, physically, not going out, not reaching out, just kind of hibernating. How do you convince people who are living with whatever that discomfort or shame might be, that now is the time to reach out and be honest about what's going on in your life, when they just want, no, I don't want people to know this?
Yeah. Often it's in while we're together, while we're in sessions together, it's in them speaking about what's happening for them, speaking about how detrimental the experience has been with me first. Sometimes you need to model opening up in order to help people to move to the next steps of opening up. So once you start, once you open the box, many
Mhm.
times people get the courage to open it further with those that they love. So they open it for me, and I'm meeting them with the grace, right? Meeting them with that support, letting them know that they're seen, that their value isn't written in their productivity, that their value is not written in their ability to have things, material things, or show up shiny, that their value exists in their innate value that was already born to them. They're given gifts, they're given presence, they're given energy, is all that people need. And that little spark is usually what helps them to come to opening up to their other individuals in their lives.
I think another thing, that people get to know who their real friends are.
Oh,
When if if you just have the fair weather friends, the ones who are happy to go out with you when you can pay for the meal, or when you can buy them a present, or because, by the way, here's this time of year, the gifting
mhm.
time of year, and maybe folks couldn't show up with the, like Santa, or, whatever it might be, and are feeling some kind of way about that. There are some families that shame family members because they didn't show up with the big satchel like they may have in the past. How do you manage those kind of old wounds, sometime, old wounds, judgments, expectations
Mhm.
at a vulnerable time?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the way that you manage them is by recognizing that we can't avoid them. That unfortunately, you are going to at some point discover who is your team and who's your tribe and who belongs to you and who doesn't. And sometimes you find that out in the most inopportune times. Sometimes you find that out when it hurts the worst
Mhm.
and when it's going to be likely hardest to recover. And it's in those moments, though, that we need to look inward and we need to take the time out to recognize that we're getting the answers that we need to be better, to be stronger, to build better community and more trusting community as we go along. I can't avoid that.
Mhm.
If I lose all my money, someone who said that they loved me and we're going to stay forever leaves. It's not, this life is not about that avoidance. It's about stepping and leaning into that and learning from it.
Well, what do you do in cases like that, where someone has left or said something that is particularly hurtful? Should you confront them? Should you just turn the page and keep moving? What's the best practice on behavior when you find yourself in that situation?
I think, it's best to listen to that inner voice. For some people, the inner voice says that I need to confront, that a part of my healing will be that this person is telling me something about our relationship and has decided, that it doesn't work or that they cannot be invested in me in the ways that I would have hoped. And I need to confront that. I need to lay all my hurt out on the line. I need to open that up and be honest about it so that as we leave each other, as we exit the relationship, I have nothing left there. I have nothing left unsaid. For other people, it is a much better situation for them to journal about these things, to just remove themselves, go complete no contact, no social media contact, no phone contact, none of that, and pull out all of their resources energetically and materially. It just depends on the person. I'm of the mindset that we must follow that impulse, that
Mhm.
inside voice that tells us and guides us. That intuitive presence is really important to support because it often is like the genuine you.
Mm. And in terms of reaching out for help, when you need it? I don't mean so much the mental health support, but with friends and loved ones.
Yeah.
How do you do it when you're feeling embarrassed?
When you're feeling embarrassed, I would say identify first and foremost the family member or friend who you feel the most comfortable with. One who you've probably been vulnerable with before, and you've seen some of the way that they will react and respond, and they to you are like a legitimate support, one that you can be the most open with, and let them know while you're having the conversation that you're having a hard time taking the next steps to reach out. They can often be a guidance, they can often be that initial like the seal breaker in some ways, the seal breaker, so that where we've been having these issues of feeling uncomfortable, we have someone who says, hey, no, step into the light. I'm
Mhm.
here. It's okay. I've got you.
I think that's powerful and good to think about. Now I'm gonna go on the flip side. There will be people tuned in right now and people who are part of their community who are doing well,
Yes.
who are doing really well, who are prospering. This was a good year for them. Wherever they work, the economy has been good and they feel very blessed with abundance. How do you fully inhabit that and not come off as insensitive and also not become the money train for everybody?
Absolutely. Oh, so those are questions about boundaries, I think, are
Yeah.
huge. And those questions, I think the other thing is, you know, where you have been fortunate materially, I think focusing on sometimes the material success creates that air of like, for some people, and this isn't true just because you're excited about your material success or speaking about your material success. It doesn't mean that you're conceited. It doesn't mean that you're rubbing it in people's faces. It just means that you had material success this year and that it's wonderful. And I think exploring those things and celebrating those things as a function of this is what I set out to do and this is how I pushed myself and this was the outcome. So
Mhm.
focusing on what it took to get there sometimes is better than focusing on the material success itself. So I had a specific outcome and it was a great outcome materially. But I think talking more about journey this year,
Mhm.
talking more about what you put into the year sometimes is the better way if you're reflecting with family and friends to talk about where you've had success. It can be really the difference in creating an air of, I put in a lot this year and I felt really good about what I put in this year. And whatever you put in this year is good enough, is great. I think
Mhm.
sometimes that is the much better conversation to have than to harp on the material success.
And then keeping in line with this notion about boundaries,
Yeah.
for the one who has abundance, how do you manage how much you share? Because people make assumptions. Well, you have,
Mhm.
and therefore, it's your to be a good person, it's your responsibility to share with me and anybody else who has less than you have.
Yeah.
How do you manage boundaries and not come off as, this rich ingrate?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's always about being clear about where you have given and where you are comfortable giving. Many times people feel like it's okay in families to count other people's pockets. It's a
Mhm.
practice that they have engaged in. And it is a dynamic that maybe they fostered and fueled throughout many years, but it's important to be clear that that is not the way that you conduct your relationships. That the way you conduct relationships is giving, is a part of your heart, is a part of who you are, but you're very selective about where and how you give, and also when you give.
I remember two examples. One, I went to an event a few years ago where Magic Johnson was speaking. And I mean, he is a brilliant businessman.
Mhm.
And he described that he can be very generous with all kinds of people, family members, entrepreneurs, etc. However, with all of them, family included, he is very specific. If you want money, you have to prove that it's valuable what you're going to do with it. So it has to be a solid business proposition. And he said, you better come correct because you can't come back. If you don't come correct the first time, there's no coming back. And I remember listening to him and thinking, oh, that's pretty harsh. But he broke it down. He said, look, if I just give money, that's not doing anything because the people are going to come back and just want more. So, Gina, the second example I have for that, I just read it in the newspaper a couple of days ago. Jay-Z was saying the same thing, that with his family members, there always are family members with their hands out, understandably.
Yeah.
But it's the same. He said, if I just give them money, they're just going to come back for more because they haven't figured out what to do with the money.
Right.
And
Exactly.
when people that wealthy say stuff like that, there are a whole bunch of people who are mad as all get out. So speak to that, please.
Yeah, they're mad about it because I think they forget and they aren't looking at their lives on us and recognizing where that is true on a smaller scale. You know, these individuals are, and it's difficult, right? People have a hard time with affluence. They find it really difficult to deal with, especially, you know, it's so easy for you. You can do whatever you want. You can garner whatever you want. Now you're rich, forgetting that these individuals didn't begin their lives rich.
Right.
Many of them come from extremely, extremely humble beginnings where they had to work in certain ways and they had to sacrifice in certain ways in order to achieve those miraculous amounts of material success. And I mean, Magic Johnson is the epitome of someone who is incredible when it comes to money and finances. And Jay-Z is the same. Both of them, humble beginnings, rose up and became individuals who understand now money as currency rather than money as just a material possession to be given and traded and all of these types of things. And I think that that is the issue, right? The issue is there is this inability at times to recognize how these things exist on a small scale and a large scale. And in your life, you've seen it happen. You know, you give somebody a couple dollars, $100, $500, and you never see it back and they never do anything, or there's no expectation that they are going to take the time out to come back and or pay that forward. And if there's no structure at all whatsoever, oftentimes we run into this place where it is you're just pulling and pulling your resources and your resources are being wasted. So, you know, and again, I'm not of the mindset that I'm not looking to make people mad. I'm not of the mindset when it comes to boundaries, we have to be willing to deal with the consequences of protecting ourselves, which means I might say to someone, no, I may tell them, you know, actually, I've given to you before and I didn't see that you did well with it, or I didn't see that you were a shepherd of your finances. And so I don't feel comfortable giving you more money. And I need to be comfortable with the idea or sit with the discomfort of the idea that they're going to be upset with me for it.
Which can be really difficult to sit with. But if you can, then you establish an understanding about the changing dynamics of the relationship, right?
Right. And you get through the authentic nature of the relationship, right? Because when people show you that they struggle with you protecting yourself and creating and maintaining security for yourself, they're showing you something about to what degree they feel you should be protected. And it's important to have your eyes open when those things are being displayed for you.
Very important. Hey guys, this is Dreamleapers with Harriette Cole. We are talking with Jeanni Johnson. We're talking mental health and moving forward. And I thought this was a very important topic at this time of year when we're transitioning from one year to the next. A lot of times people talk about making their New Year's resolutions, or they make commitments that they feel very excited about as they begin the new year. But then at the end of the year, they're like, oh, did I even remember what I said I was going to do? And how well did I do? And there's a lot of self-judgment that goes into this. Jeanni, I like the idea of setting goals. I think setting goals for yourself and working toward those goals is very important. but I also know that sometimes we set ourselves up for disappointment
Yeah.
and self-judgment when we don't fulfill whatever that is. So can you talk about setting goals and what's a healthy way of doing that?
Absolutely. It's important to set goals that are long-term goals for short-term goals. And when it comes to a new year starting, a fresh year, many times starting with the shorter term goals and making them, measurable, making sure they're articulated clearly, making sure they have specific small outcomes that we can see and touch and experience in this life can be really a great thing in building confidence and courage. And then looking to those long-term goals where you're able to see, like, I'm going to be putting in a lot of work on this. So let me check in every 3 months. Let me check in 6 months. Let me check in 9 months. So then I can have an understanding of where I am at process and working toward that long-term goal. So I always tell people, do both. Make sure to have these very specific, measurable goals that are like building confidence because you're seeing every day that you're meeting them or working towards them. And then have these brilliant, miraculous, marvelous goals that are just so beyond the small stuff. They're major types of goals where you're dreaming very big and leaving open that a little bit of just you being focused in purpose, and like the universe or God or whoever you believe in can take on the rest and make it way bigger than you ever could have imagined.
I like that. Earlier this year, I participated in this 100-day plan,
Hmm.
and I loved it. It was a stretch for imagining what you want to do in the next 100 days and then doing it. And actually, I'm going to have a course on this in the new year because I loved it so much and it was effective for me. So I'm offering it to others. But I like it, and it falls in line with what you just shared, measurable goals,
Yes.
things that are, you can have your giant goals, but then what are the steps that'll get you there so that you feel like you're having some success?
Mm-hmm.
What do you do, Jeannie, if you get to the point where, oh, you had these goals and, oh, so much time has passed and you didn't do it, and then you just start beating yourself up? How can you stop that pounding in your head and move forward?
Oh, sure. By recognizing that you're a growing, changing person. Just because you set a goal and you don't meet it, it doesn't mean that you're a failure by any means. It may mean that in this stage of your life and where you are, that goal was not a priority. And you
Mm,
making it when you did, maybe you thought it was, but you not working towards it, you not putting the energy towards it tells you what's real, which is it's not something I prioritize right now. I can
mm,
want it as much as I want it. I can want anything. But the fact of the matter is, if I'm not going to get it, then maybe it isn't a priority to date. I often tell people don't wait too long to check in on your goals. Do not do that. I had a master class that was offered to me by a master executive coach this year. Her name is Dr. Tiana Rogers, and she was incredible. And she taught me that if I have a goal that's in place and I'm working towards it week after week, but I see that I'm not showing up well for that goal, there has to be a defining point where I say to myself, you know what, Jeannie, you're not doing what you said you're doing with that goal. It's not
mm.
a priority. Either I need to replace it with something new that I can prioritize and that I want to feel strongly about prioritizing, or I need to eliminate it altogether until a different time in my life when maybe it is a bigger priority for me.
That is a very healthy way of looking at it
Mhm.
because things happen. And I think that's a very good perspective. If you didn't do it, it must not have been that high of a priority. And I think my daughter's in college, so I also know there's this procrastination that
Yes.
can come with, oh, I have this big paper. I'm going to do everything else before I do that.
Mhm.
So when people have that sense of procrastination, the biggest thing on the list that they put last, how do you help people to reprioritize when they do think it's a priority, but somehow they're afraid of it?
Yeah, I was just gonna say this. The minute you said that, I heard fear, and that's what many of my clients are experiencing. And I always encourage them to do the thing actually that scares them the most, The thing that scares you the most, the things that you're most worried about, do not prioritize the other smaller things. Prioritize that thing, because that's usually the thing that's going to move your life forward in the best ways. And it's usually the thing actually that's going to be the catapult that brings you to whatever the next level is.
And so it's easier said than done. I hear you. And then that thing is on the list and it's like, oh, I don't know. How do you change your mind?
Small bites. Small bites build confidence. Small, like addressing. I have a day where I just address the hard things. One day a week where I'm like, the things that annoy me the most, the things that I feel worried about the most, the things that are on my heart daily, all the time. I have one day a week where I have to address some little part of those things every single week. It has to happen. It's Tuesdays. And to me, doing the hard things tells your brain and your body that you can do the hard things. It gets you much more used to and much more comfortable doing the hard things. But when we avoid, we create these barriers and we create high amounts of anxiety in the context of these things that we're afraid of. And it is easier said than done, but it must be done, and you can do it. And when you do it, what you recognize is everything that I was afraid of was some hypothetical, like actual concrete thing. Like many people, it's the disappointment from others. It's the idea of being seen as incompetent. It's this mind state about who I am and what it means if I don't get this thing done, versus that I'm going to be harmed or I'm going to perish in the context of not completing these things.
So you call yourself the love psychotherapist, which I just love that. I was just a couple of days ago with some people, some married couples, some single people. Primarily the single people were women, over 50 in this particular group. And one woman said, I'm about to go to online dating because I'm doing everything that I know to do. I put myself out there, go to this or that. I'm fit. I'm doing all the things, and I'm not even meeting anyone. So there's that. There are the people who aren't meeting anyone who are trying, and then there are the people who are longtime couples who are bickering about this or that. What do you find to be some of the biggest love relationship challenges today? And what do you advise people in terms of managing those things?
Absolutely. I think it's the greatest issue has been, and it's a long-standing issue, but it's communication. It's often communication that exists as a barrier. Individuals who have gotten used to a dynamic where one person communicates very passively, the other person communicates very aggressively, and they can't sort of find their way to the middle, to that more assertive communication where they're being very clear about what their needs are, and also being very clear and intentional about articulating that they understand the needs of their partner. It's not just about what we need. It's about understanding and being accountable to the fact that we know what our partner also needs, and we understand what those things are, and that we're allowing those things to grow and to change. I think that's been for the longest time an issue. And I think also what I'm seeing more in this year, especially in people building or trying to build relationships with other people, is there is this wrong or right, this black and white, this like very polarizing understanding about men and women and people in relationships and who gets what and who brings where and when to the table and what the value is in other people. And there's been an emphasis on trying to invest as little as possible into another person, but siphon as much as possible from that same person. Can you imagine like investing as small as you possibly can in another individual and hoping to siphon as much of their energy, as much of their resources, as much as their love as you possibly can? Is
that happening because people feel burned?
No.
Is that why they're doing that?
Oh, yes. I mean, I would say absolutely. I think people they are bringing the baggage of their previous relationships, or not even the baggage of necessarily previous relationships that are romantic. They could be the baggage of familial hurts, the baggage of ancestral hurts. These things exist for people, and they've been taught that the way to show up is to close the heart down, to shut themselves down, to avoid being vulnerable with other people, to ensure that they are not seen fully, that they're only seen kind of for the sake of like being able to like deny that this is who they actually are, or deny that this is the way they're actually moving. It's a really sad actually occurrence that's been happening that I've seen a lot more of this year.
And, this notion of shutting down or protecting your vulnerability is probably one of the things, one way of talking about that.
Mm-hmm.
It's tricky because if you've had your heart broken, especially if you've had it broken more than once,
Yeah.
then it can be really challenging to say that I'm willing to be vulnerable again, because what would make me believe that I can trust you if I haven't been able to trust other people?
Yeah.
And so then there's that. And then like my friend who was saying, she just can't even find anybody to go out with.
Yeah.
And so then when she does find people, if she's going through these online sites or, these anonymous, in a sense, ways of finding people, what safeguards can there be in there where on the one hand, you are putting yourself out there, but how vulnerable do you want to be in a situation like that?
Yeah. Yeah. I think when it comes to online dating, that is a whole different beast. And I think we need to be clear on there being an emphasis on the slow brewing connection. And where there is the slow brewing connection, that's the connection where we're opening up, but we're opening up to the extent that is appropriate to our knowledge of this individual. And also just remembering that trusting other people, absolutely important. We hope to run into people who are trustworthy, who will, show up in specific ways that ensure for us that we can trust them. But the fact of the matter is, trusting is about trusting self first. So I need to trust that whatever's going to come up, whoever I'm dealing with, whoever I'm spending time with, I can trust myself. So if they show me something that is outside of my values, that isn't aligned with where I want to be, that I know for a fact, in some ways it may derail my work towards my purpose, that I'm willing to say goodbye, or I'm willing to say to them, hey, you can't stay in my life in this capacity, or I don't think we can move forward. I find that most people experience the greatest deal of hurt that they experience, like the highest amount of it, in the context of the fact that they knew from the beginning that a person didn't meet their values, that a person could potentially derail their purpose work. And they decided because they had money, because they looked really good, because they came from a good family, because
or
they
because they were just lonely and here was a person saying, spend time with me.
Exactly. There were so limited options that they were like, oh, well, there's really no options. I mean, this is the best of non-good options for me. So I'm just going to go with it. Versus choosing to be single, choosing to spend time alone, or choosing to leave a relationship for the sake of recognizing that sometimes you need to be isolated in order to do your best work in community. When you're isolated and when you're alone, it's because sometimes there's something that can go towards your purpose, some way of working in your purpose that requires you to be alone and not to be beholden to a relationship. And not that you won't feel lonely, not that you won't, maybe feel a sense of envy for those who have met their person. But at the end of the day, if I'm being truly aligned with what's coming to me intuitively, we have to make hard decisions.
That's powerful. Hey guys, this is Dreamleapers with Harriette Cole. We're talking with Jeanni Johnson as we transition from 2024 to 2025, thinking about how to protect our hearts, how to open our hearts, how to be the very best that we can be. We only have a few minutes left, Jeanni. I want to talk to folks about what they can do in 2025 to open their hearts, to be open to whatever is right for them. What can you recommend to people as an approach to walking into the new year?
Absolutely. I think the thing that I recommend most often is for people to identify their anchors. Be very clear about
Anger.
their anchors. Yeah, their anchors.
Okay.
Yes, their anchors. And anchors can be spiritual anchors. This is what allows me to feel grounded and allows me to feel safe. Anchors can be, like I said, community. So maybe they're friends. Anchors can be family. Anchors can sometimes be your career. And they can sometimes be that self-evolutionary process. Many people, they go on retreats to understand themselves better, retreats where they're in silence, where they have the opportunity to reflect for long periods of time. They, return to nature and find themselves in nature again, being still, being quiet, listening for what their next steps are. Many people delve into religion and the spirituality that they had maybe previously been in or previously left behind. And this can all be really helpful in creating those anchors that root them and help them to feel like, okay, no matter what's happening around me, I have this sense of security inwardly that will allow me to take risk and to show up differently this year.
And as we make those efforts and then life happens, how do you realign yourself? If you're making the effort, you're doing your prayer, you're doing your meditation, you're doing physical exercise, eating well, whatever those things are for you, but you still get knocked off center sometimes. How do you get back on?
Yeah, I think the first thing you have to do is offer yourself compassion and
Mm.
admit that in the moment you have tried your best and worked really hard and you're looking to connect, but maybe you're not feeling that sense of connection, and that's okay. Sometimes we're going to feel a little lost. Sometimes we're going to feel a little upset. In those moments, surrender is really important. And that means surrendering to whatever feelings are coming and allowing them to enter and exit as they came in. Sometimes it's important to just sit in that first before you're trying to keep moving and moving and moving. I find it's very difficult for people to sit in the disappointment of not showing up as they would have hoped that they would. And
Mm.
sometimes you need to sit in that to just allow, first off, for you to recalibrate and design a potential new plan to address those things. But then also to just experience that something is going on for you that's outside of what you want. You need to get used to that feeling so that it doesn't become something that you're consistently avoiding, so that you know that you can work through it and overcome it at some point. If you keep avoiding and pushing these things off, oftentimes it becomes the end of the world when we're not doing as well as we had hoped.
Oh, lot of food for thought. Thank you. I knew it would be great talking to you now. I hope that everyone who's listening will take to heart the things that Jeanni Johnson has offered. We can take care of ourselves. We need to love ourselves, to be kind to ourselves, especially through this transition moment when we move from one year to the next. Thank you, Jeanni. Thank you always for your great insights, and Happy New Year.
My pleasure. Happy New Year. It's been a wonderful time talking to you as always, Harriet. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to have been here and to have been with you as we close out this lovely year.
Thank you. And thank you to all of you for tuning in. I hope that this year has been full in the best possible way for you. I hope that this conversation will help you as you move into these final days and into the transition into 2025. Until then, have a great day and make it count.